Koshi Sanpo.
Koshi Sanpo! Suba Sensei Sentai con queso. Back in the house. The dojo.
I would rather have guac than queso.
Huh?
Like a pick between the two. And depending on the place, maybe pico de gallo instead of queso.
Joining us visually in this video are the talented Joe, Steve, and Scott. Alongside
I'm the talented
Sensei Rob.
I'm the one with talent. So the Koshi Sanpo, the kata attached to the kamae. Whew, there's so much to unpack there.
Really? Because once upon a time, I would have said these were just these were the things that you did before you were able to begin class. I never saw the merit of the Koshi Sanpo until you started showing things like, but there are secretly things you can do with them. I just thought it's like the mile you have to run before you can start sports practice.
Well, that helps you run better.
Yeah, and it increases your endurance and all that jazz, but it's just something you have to do before the real training begins. And I always saw that as Koshi Sanpo. And for some reason I never associated that with Sanshin, just Koshi Sanpo. I thought we just have to get through this and then we can actually begin training. I never saw it as actual training.
Sure. So interesting enough, like from the dojos I tend to frequent, no jokes intended, some tend to lean towards the Sanshin more, and some tend to lean towards the Koshi Sanpo more. And I use them for different tools. As different tools. The kamae are different. The mechanics are similar. I mean, some people, have trouble separating ichimonji no kata from sui no kata, for any real purpose. And depending on how you do them, some people, the principles that they say are in sui no kata, it's like, oh, those principles are taught in ichimonji. You're not doing sui no kata. Wrong. Sometimes in Facebook forums, they say that. But, I mean, I see these kamae as tools to teach you did I say kamae? That was a Freudian slip. So I see these kata as the actual manifestations of the kamae, while the kamaes are snapshot in time, perhaps. It's like if you needed to illustrate throwing shuriken in a still frame, you would see the shuriken flying through the air. It'd be drawn in place, and then you might see 3 lines coming off of it to show that it's moving, and someone with their arm extended. That doesn't mean the way you practice it is you extend your arm and then levitate a shuriken and then try to manifest heat waves around it, So I think that's one of those things. So when it comes to how you practice the kata, it tends to bring out how you use the kamae. And I guess that's really what we get into here. Is first I'm talking to them about the kamae, and then we go into the kata, and that lasts 5 seconds, and then I start doing what I want to do.
Yeah, you get real playful with it, and you start getting into a little bit more modern and real stances. And
whoa,
techniques.
Shots fired. Whoa, what?
Well, I mean, the standing on one foot is fun for Hicho, or the arms in a skull and crossbones leaning forward stance is nice for Jumanji, but I mean, that's not really what you're going to be getting into.
So that goes into the lesson that I was trying to teach is, I think I even brought this up with you. I see the kamae very similar to as like a full-bodied mudra. So if anyone's familiar with the first level of Gyokoru, the Tenchiraku Gasho, off the top of my head, I think, how that's supposed to empty your mind of intention and all those things to make yourself available to things future on. That's taught in Gyokoru. I see these kamae embodying certain principles, and it's one of those things where we talk about like being one with nature, or the state of things. But like, it doesn't have to be a foo-fooey thing. Like, if you're trying to get away from someone and you're trying to get to a safe place to assess the situation, that is ichimonji. So if you're in that mind state, but then you're throwing a wild punch, that punch is not in one with nature, which the nature is you're trying to get your head clear so you can assess. You're flailing. Or if you're in a state of I'm going to punch this person in the face, and you're trying to convince yourself you're otherwise, maybe with postures, you can hide that intent, but that's kyojutsu, right? That's not the true nature of that posture, like kage no kamae with weapons and sort of thing.
So for you, the kamae are a state, and that can be a mental state, that can be a physical pose, and that can be the actions done with a certain intention.
Yeah, the intention is really good. I think it is all of those, right? And so it's like if you and then the problem comes like where you see, when we start ichimonji no kata, we start in ichimonji no kamae, and then we move through ichimonji no kamae into doko no kamae traditionally, come in with that omote shito blamo, right? But I see that as like, you train getting punched while in ichimonji so many times, your brain makes that connection. When you get punched and you drop into ichimonji, it's like it's part of life at that point because it's happened so many thousands of times. Or if you train, you're standing in jumonji, you get punched, you move in. So it's one of those things where if someone punches you and you need to move in, you move through jumonji. It trains you to move through that space, and to practice it, you need that foundation. So you have to stand there well and take the time to make sure you're standing there correctly, more or less, covering the bases. So that way when you move through it in an instant, you're more likely to pass through those parts of the posture that matter the most. And that changes depending on the situation, for sure.
Speaking of the posture, that makes sense. I've actually got two things. One, I want to commend you on your turnout.
What does that mean?
Turnout is the degree to which your toes can rotate away from your spine. It's typically found in dance.
Okay.
And because your point of rotation is high in your leg, it's in your hips, many people who start out in martial arts turn out at their knee. So it's just their lower
that's terrible
part of
for
the
your
leg.
knees.
Oh yeah, definitely. But because you're so used to turning out high in your leg, when you land in some of these hicho, your foot is in like a 5th degree position.
Well, I do have hip dysplasia in both hips.
It helps if they're not attached in the first place. And thing two, I really like, I believe it's mostly with Joe and Steve, you really display being a problem to them in the Jumanji section.
Oh, trust me, I was being very obnoxious to Scott too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you forget how close. I mean, obviously you need to be close to someone in order to punch them, but how close you need to stay to someone in order to keep them at bay, in order to keep them from doing certain things. You need to be a problem and stay in the space to a degree that they have to find a different route.
Yeah, so I guess we can talk to that nature of the kamae that we were kind of discussing.
Sure.
So ichimonji, more than anything, I see it as getting to a place of safety to assess the situation. Typically hands up in that so familiar gyokoru kamae that we used for like 5 seconds in some of these, and then off angle from their prescribed attack, so they have to adjust in a place where you can assess, and then in the kata you assess and respond, right? So you respond with that blown out doko no kamae, flying through with an omote shito, and I really see that as secondary to the kata, the going into doko, because you could just as easily you could turn in with a jumonji ura shito or come up with a hoko or several things. I mean, I think we even play with going into hicho, and using hicho as opposed to practicing hicho. And I think that's something else akin to what you were talking about, is practicing the kata versus using the techniques. Because there's a lot of techniques in the kata, but applying those things never works out like a kata, But with Jumanji, I see it as like the inverse. You are very much getting in their face and creating a problem for them to assess. More or less, I see Ichimonji as escaping violence and Jumanji creating it.
Well, you definitely did the escaping with Ichimonji. I think all of the guys ran through a series of practices with you where it became definitely, there were some spinal adjustments required, but it was much more focused on the arm and just immediately make an entrance so that you can get away.
Yeah, so I think that made the principle more visible. There's different targeting, let's say,
right.
Some of them being more painful than others. There's kasumi, there's the vertebrae. There's all sorts of different things you can be doing. And I think it's easy to lose yourself in that part of the strike. And I'm not saying it's not important, but at the same time, from my knowledge, Takamatsu used as an opener in many of his, well, I don't know about exhibition matches, but let's just say encounters, the 1-2 that we were kind of practicing, maybe not in that fashion. In Koku, you absorb it and then hit it up. But this, I think, embodied that feeling of Ichimonji of getting to a place to assess. Because if you're getting struck, you need to, dropping into Kamae is one way, but then we take it another step further here and we, extricate from the entire situation so you can assess, you can see behind you and around you.
And it's great that all of these practitioners are black belts and they're working on this as well, because I think once you pass into green belt territory, people forget that it's about being safe. It's about getting away many times.
Yeah.
And it's not, I have to stay here and finish all the steps of the kata or else I didn't do the kata right. That's definitely something I fall into where unless all of the boxes are checked off and it was textbook perfect, then it doesn't count and you did it wrong and
that's
you
how
failed.
You get better at it though, right?
Sometimes you just gotta get gone.
Yeah, right, but it's like, context versus, application, context, and practice. Mm-hmm. And practice, it's like practicing music. You don't want to be like, oh, I always play that note flat. It's okay. I always play that note flat, so don't worry about it. That's how I play the music.
Artistic interpretation.
Yeah, but when it's time for the concert, you can't start the song over. Right? Like, you need to be able to drive through, and hopefully you've practiced, those harder notes enough that maybe, they blend in a little better.
Well, and it definitely fits the Ichimonji mindset of, Ichimonji no Kamae mindset of drop back to a safe place. Sometimes that safe place is just not in the fight.
Sure. Well, yeah, initially, if you can't get hit, usually you're pretty safe.
Usually, yeah. So
we're not getting into all art of war stuff here. But that's
what I meant earlier when I said you get into a little bit more of a playful and a little bit more of a real stance and technique with the Kamae.
Sure. Okay. So funny enough, because the idea is if I'm punching you and I'm punching you well, that is me performing Jumanji more or less, and that's what I was trying to get at them. So as long as I maintain Kamae, that state of mind, that posturing violence, I am still in Jumanji. You still need to perform Ichimonji as long as I am performing Jumanji. And the longer one of us, until one of us more or less succeeds in the Kamae. And that was the idea behind those interactions. And plus the way I perform Jumanji, it's nice once you close up and you're in there for kumyuch situations and things like that. And then I was explaining Hicho, using Hicho as a tool. You'll see the way, I don't know, visually people probably didn't pick up, but the way you were describing practicing it, how you start in Hicho no Kamae, and then perform the gate onto a belly punch, and then toe kick into the armpit or ball kick into the ribs, whichever, and then come in with another shito. Everyone pretty much does that stuff pretty similarly. I see that as an exercise of developing the strength and dexterity to perform the movements.
Right.
I don't see that as self-defense technique number 2 necessarily.
That's not combat training? That's not real-world application?
Well, yeah. I mean, some would say I'm doing it wrong because that's my opinion, obviously, right? Then why are you even doing it? You're doing it wrong if you can't use that in combat. And it's like, I don't know, that's kind of silly, you know.
Yeah, I actually had to change my Hicho game since we got these blue mats once upon a time.
Interesting. Why is that?
In the different places I've trained, the flooring has always made, I think, the biggest impact on the training.
Oh, yeah, people have trouble with stability barefoot on these mats.
Mm-hmm. So this versus concrete versus the straw mats versus wrestling mats, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Depending on what grass, if we're outside.
Sure.
Depending on what I'm on, how slippery my socks are. Am I even wearing socks? Are we in tabby? The flooring always makes the biggest
Joe
effect.
has Giga Tabby on this.
He does, yeah.
It's very difficult for him at times. I totally relate to that. That's one of those reasons you train on different surfaces, right?
But I think that might, I mean, if you realize that you're in a certain surface, or if you're wearing certain shoes, it might change what kind of mentality and what type of kamae you need to take.
Oh, for sure. I think that's something people really take for granted is, you know, most people train barefoot or in tabby.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you're dealing with, in a situation where you need most of the stuff, usually that's not the case. You know, and if you're wearing, you know, depending on what kind of dress shoes you have on, or work boots, or heels, like, well, you don't really wear heels necessarily. All of that really changes how you move. You know, if you're not used to moving this way and what you always wear, it definitely changes it. Even the clothing, right? We're used to training in the black pajamas. Well, most people are used to training in the black pajamas so much. It's, you know, modern day clothing can be a different experience depending on how it fits, for sure.
So maybe you're trying to do something but realize you can't get away, so guess what? I'm switching into Jumanji. I'm going to be coming aggressively at you because I cannot Ichimonji my way out of the situation safely. And that's something that recent training, I mean, I was really struggling with because I was performing Jumanji, but I was doing it with such an Ichimonji attitude. Sure. My initial rabbit-like fear impulse of get away, get safe, they're too big, I'm scared, no, did not help me at all when I needed to be the aggressor. And they're like I need to be able to turn that on and off and practice in a quick kamae like this, in a quick kata like this with people I trust.
Sure.
Is what's going to form that for me. Yeah,
well, funny enough you say that, like the, well, I guess formal way I do Jumonji no Kata, you know, most people see it as like chained, you know, back to back. I see that as implementing Jumonji no Kamae, Ichimonji no Kamae, Hicho, the transfer, and then once again you're in a different position. It shouldn't be them just punching again from a similar state. They should be affected from that first encounter, sort of how in many of the Kukishin kata, it's like punch, punch, kick, punch, throw. You know, when you perform Jumanji, that first, you know, hit happens and you pop, pop, boom, you throw up the Mitsubishi, and then they have to come in again. You should be in a place, you know, a better place than the first time you performed it. I just think it's interesting that all those elements are really in that kata. And even the idea of coming in and taking their eyes at one point and all the things that can more or less turn into. Are you masking something? Are you literally taking their eyes? You know.
And I know that we were joking around the first time we watched this. If you've made it this far in the video, bless you for having to sit through all of these repeats. They are boom, boom, at the bass.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, none of this is actually a repeated shot.
These are all unique clips.
Each one.
And while I was joking with you about, this is going to be such a pain to sit through, it really shows that gradual shift from traditional clean-cut kamae kata to let's be a little loose. What if you get their knee? What if you're coming in at their eyes? What if your hands are lower? What if they go to the outside? And it helps, I think, blend the changes that you make, because it's not going to be the kata every time we go into it, but it still needs to be the kata.
Yeah, it's the embodiment of the kamae, right? That embodiment of the kata, the nature of it. That's what I was getting at. Like that whole, idea of standing pied off with your hands up, talking naturally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's ichimonji. You know, that's something you use if someone comes up to you. You're like, whoa, hey guy, hey, I'm just gonna wave my hands in between us because that'll keep me safe. And I just gesture when I talk. You know, and then if you need to violently flail into their face from that position, you know, wham, it can happen on the turn of a heel.
Mm-hmm. As opposed to you standing, you know, in a deep set back stance.
I mean, there is that too.
With the hand covering the neck and the other extended at their heart. That comes off. That doesn't usually de-escalate a situation.
You know, taking that line of sight where they're over, you know, the moonlight is what shows their silhouette. You know, taking that real low stance. Yeah, I like that.
Dabbing on the haters.
So I guess with the Koshi Sanpo, the biggest part is I see that as a method of teaching what the kamae is supposed to feel like as opposed to what it's supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
We have the idea of what it's supposed to look like, but what is it supposed to feel like? I feel like the Koshi Sanpo uses many very solid tools to teach you what that feels like, and after doing it a few thousand times, you know, more things kind of become open to interpretation because you realize you're moving the same way, but different things become accessible. And I guess the more times you do it, the more comfortable you become with the movement, the more you see those things, you know.
So the point is, keep training.
Yeah. I didn't know there was a point, but I guess most people look for one of those.
To sum it up, keep training.
Yeah, I like that. You should do that.
Punch.
Punch. To sum it up.
Punch.
Wait. I feel I want to start like plugging things.
Oh, like and subscribe.
No, not
this.
No, they don't need to like and subscribe. We have other things though. We have I have a newsletter.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you don't know that, I have a newsletter. There's a link. Description. Link in the description. I don't expect you to like and subscribe, so I mean that's fine.
If you're interested in seeing other short clips or photos from the dojo, you can be sure to check out our Instagram.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, there's some fun stuff on there, I guess. You might like that. If you're willing to watch this shit, you might like that. Yeah. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, newsletter. Yeah, newsletter. You know, you can really get my opinion on some stuff if you care. I mean, I spend time on it, so. Yeah, that's probably it then, yeah? Okay, cool.
Matane.